Hi,
All right.
everyone.
I think, are you taking it from the top today? I think you are.
I'll
Layla.
take it from the top.
All right.
I hope everyone can hear us, and we apologize for the delay. The electricity goes in and out in Yemen, and we've been trying to connect with Anwar, and we're finally successful in doing that. I am your co-host of Latitude Adjustment Podcast, Layla Mukhaber, coming from Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. And with me is my co-host, Eric.
Hello, everybody. Should I take it from there? I guess I should. So, hey, everybody. My name's Eric Maddox. I'm the co-host of Latitude Adjustment Podcast, as my co-host Layla just told you. A little bit of background on the show. We cover underreported issues, places, and communities around the world. Today, we'll be connecting to Yemen, a subject that we've covered a couple of times in previous episodes, and we'll be posting links to some of those previous episodes as well, so that you can get more historical context and get updated on the current situation, anything that we might not cover in this episode. So be sure to check out that information. We'll also be posting this episode after it's completed. We'll be taking the live broadcast as a recording and posting it on YouTube, and then we will be sharing that on the website at latitudeadjustmentpod.com/live. So be sure to check that out as well. That will probably be done. We'll do other materials and how better to assist Anwar and also the people of Yemen. And covered the basics there. We're trying to do these live events every week, but this is also a traditional audio format podcast. So be sure to check out those other episodes as well. We're getting close to about 70 episodes at this point, and you can find that full archive at latitudeadjustmentpod.com. And for some more information about the show and about Yemen, I'm going to pass it over to my co-host, Layla.
Thank you, Eric. For those of you who aren't familiar, since the war began in 2015, Yemen has experienced the largest cholera outbreak in recorded history, widespread food insecurity and starvation amongst the majority of its population. And it must be noted that though Yemen was already a poor nation before the war, the severity of the current situation is completely man-made.
So to put this in some human context, at one point it was reported that one Yemeni child was dying from malnutrition or other preventable illnesses and diseases every 10 minutes. Presently, about 80% of Yemen's population is dependent on some form of assistance from the international community, and we haven't even touched on what COVID has done.
Yeah, we've learned from the Norwegian Refugee Council, which was published in May of this year, that Yemen is now the world's largest humanitarian crisis. 5 years of devastating war and an economic deterioration and the collapse of public services has left 24 million Yemenis dependent on protection or humanitarian aid for their survival. That's houses, farms, hospitals, schools, and water systems that have been damaged or destroyed. And 1/3 of the population, which is approximately 10 million people, are only one step away from famine.
So that is the situation in Yemen in brief. What we want to talk about now a bit is our guest's story. And then, of course, the focus of this podcast will be him speaking about his current situation and what led to it. So today we're going to be speaking to Anwar Alomaisi. In February of this year, Anwar was deported without warning back to his home country of Yemen. He'd spent more than 20 years in the U.S. He's an accomplished wildlife photographer, and he was a volunteer with his local fire department in the New York City area. For 22 years, Anwar always made monthly check-ins with immigration officials. But earlier this year, I think it was the end of January, beginning of February, he was deported with no opportunity to see his attorney or to say goodbye to his family. And he is in Yemen now as a result.
Yeah, I was personally super devastated when I saw this news, as Anwar is a friend of mine and someone who always volunteered at my organization's events in New York City. I met him because he came out of nowhere, recommended by a friend, to photograph our Gaza 5K. And we became fast friends. And anyone who's been to those events remembers how energetic, enthusiastic, and wonderful Anwar is. So more on the decision around his deportation, that decision was taken despite the fact that Anwar feared for his life due to the political activism due to his political activism, and with his home country locked in a brutal civil war that has led to the worst humanitarian crisis in the world, according to the United Nations. So we speak to Anwar and Aiden this Friday today, both about his case, about the current situation for the people of Yemen.
And be sure to check this post. Be sure to share this post. If you're watching this on Facebook, as we assume that you are, be sure to share this link to your timeline so that we can amplify the effect of this broadcast. Wherever you post it, people who follow you will also be able to follow what we're recording right now. So be sure to share this link to your timeline. It will automatically be broadcast live, just as we are right now, and it will replay after it's been recorded and on repeat. And also we'll be offering in comments and in the course of our conversation ways that people can get involved to help Anwar and the people of Yemen.
Thank you so much for joining us today, especially those of you from the Bring Anwar Back campaign, a very popular campaign on Facebook. Thank you to Anwar and all of the audience for tuning in and following up. And now on to our interview. I'm going to pass it over to you, Eric.
All right. So first of all, just want to acknowledge that we are connecting to a part of the world where internet is spotty in best times for reasons that should be obvious to anybody who's followed the situation in Yemen. So we are having some technical challenges. And if the call drops during the course of this conversation, just be aware. We're doing the best that we can with challenges as far as infrastructure. Anwar, are you there? Are you able to hear us now? All right. We'll see. It's been kind of coming and going for the last 20 minutes, and we were in a good spot about 10 minutes ago, but it could have faded out again. So we'll give it a few minutes. And let's see. In the meantime, as we have some people joining us, I want to address some of the questions here. Joining the podcast. Yeah, the way that this works for those who might be posting comments is we can't really bring people into the actual live show as a co-participant, but what we can do is we can answer your questions. So any questions that you have that you want to post in the comments, we're happy to do our best to answer those. But again, it just depends on how well we're able to connect today as well. Anwar, do we have you? Can you hear us?
Yes, in the meanwhile, while we're waiting, we see comments from Ayman El Sawa. And we would love for you and anyone else that are tuning in to actually add some questions. We have a series of our own questions we want to ask Anwar, and hopefully we'll be able to connect with him. If not, we'll have to determine whether or not we need to rebroadcast. But for now, we'd love to see your comments, and maybe we can address some of them even from our own personal perspective. So feel free, if you're watching this video, to write in the comments below it. I see one comment from someone who I believe is Anwar's relative. It says, "I hope my cousin can come back again." We share those sentiments with you, and we're hoping that things like this will help elevate his campaign.
Yes, and I mean, again, the conversation is it's covering two different levels. So we're dealing with some issues related to the political situation and the immigration situation of the current administration in the U.S., which directly led to Anwar's deportation after checking in and making sure that his immigration status was at least, it was in a tenuous position from what I understand, but it had kind of just stayed in that place for over 2 decades. And then just kind of out of nowhere, he was given a notification that he needed to come back. And I think it was like, he would have these periodic check-ins every few months. And he was told he needed to come back in 30 days. And then he was just given a very immediate notification that he was going to be deported. And I think it all took place in the space of just a few days, like definitely less than a week. So that's the reality for not just Anwar, but other people. And it's important to point out as well that this is indicative of, I hate to say it, but a trend, something that's happened to quite a few people in the U.S., although everybody's individual story, of course, is going to be different. And also, this is the story of Yemen, of where he finds himself now, which has been stuck in a brutal civil war since, I mean, even that's kind of debatable, September 2014 to the beginning of 2015. depending on, I guess what indicators you want to suggest, turn that into an international conflict with the Saudi-led coalition getting involved in an air offensive in that country and a ground offensive. So it's been brutal on the people of Yemen. It's involved multiple actors, and some of those actors include Western countries, such as the United States, which through its political relationship with Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Gulf has not used its political heft in ways that it could have to possibly put a halt to the offensive, especially the aerial bombardment of the country. Also, there are arms contracts that are taking place between the U.S. and some of these countries. And then there is, although the U.S. is not directly involved as a military force, it is providing logistical and intelligence support, or has been. There have been some changes in that since I last covered this on the podcast, with some legislation being proposed in the U.S. Congress. But I mean, Saudi-U.S. relations, Emirati-U.S. relations are what they are. And this is a case of some of the wealthiest nations on earth involved in a bombardment of what is universally recognized to be the poorest country in the Middle East. So that's the backstory, as best I can tell it, off the cuff. And we're waiting to see if Anwar's going to be able to join us today. I know that he's frustrated. He went through a lot to try and join this call. What happened was that the electricity was cut at the last minute as he was going to join us. And that just happens in Yemen. And so he was left scrambling to try and connect to us using his 3G connection, and then trying to find a place that actually had Wi-Fi, which in a lot of cases can mean trying to find a place that's got a generator, which means somebody's footing the bill for fuel costs. So that's what he's trying to navigate on his end right now. So thank you, everybody who's tuning in. We know that you care about Anwar, that you're patient, and that you understand that these are trying circumstances. But that's what's happening at the moment. So any questions here that we can look at?
Yeah, I see a number of comments from people who know Anwar. First of all, thank you, Eric, for giving us some of that context. This is definitely an issue that I hope to learn more about, and part of my interest in interviewing Anwar is so that I can have the perspective of somebody who is physically there right now, instead of what we're seeing very minimally in the news. That's the beauty of our show, is that we connect with real people in real places, talking about real issues. And I see a lot of comments coming in, which just shows the immense solidarity around Anwar's campaign. I don't know if you want to read out some of these, if we want to take turns, but we'd love to recognize your comments as we wait for Anwar.
Do you want to do some of that? And I'm actually messaging him right now in Messenger. So I'm going to see if I can.
All right, I'll let you get to that while I take a look at some of these comments. Okay. So I here that we have another comment from Tina Barcenas. I'm sorry, I think I mispronounced your name, saying that Anwar is a great guy and an awesome photographer. I agree. He took thousands of photos for me in his time in New York, every single year volunteering to document the Gaza 5K, which is a big walk run that I host in New York City and other cities around the country as part of my day gig with Under USA, and that's to support the humanitarian needs, specifically mental health of refugees in Gaza. So despite the kind of devastating circumstances in Yemen, Anwar's heart is so big that he would offer his time and talents to uplift other causes, including the one that I'm part of. I see here some other comments about him that he is, Eamon, again, said that he is an activist and organizer for many years, and that Anwar would always cover justice events without hesitation and always donate his time and experiences to do so. And I think that's something that we've all experienced with Anwar, and might be the way that many of us have met him. It just speaks to the beautiful human that he is. I see from Galal Al-Amari that he was with his brother Anwar in Yemen 2 months ago before he came back to London. The situation in Yemen is really bad, especially the safety and security of the place where Anwar lives is zero. He hopes that he gets out sooner than later for his own safety. We share that same wish. I'd like to read a few more to recognize kind of you, our wonderful audience that is so patiently waiting for us to kind of dig more into the topic.
If I can interrupt for just a moment, just to give you a quick update. I am talking to Anwar right now. He's going to another location to try and get a better connection. Okay. So I'll keep you updated, but that's where we're at right now.
I think that's also very illustrative of his dedication, that he's willing to drive to different places or take taxis. I don't know how he gets around in Yemen so that he can be here to share his story with everyone. That's just typical Anwar, and I think we all know that. And I can't wait for us to hopefully bring him back to where he wants to be, and so he can continue to do amazing things for our communities here in the United States, especially for those of us that are tuned in from those places. So I'm going to continue with the comments because they are wonderful. I see something from a cousin in San Francisco, California, that says, Anwar's a great person. We'll do anything to bring him back. Karen Lagreca says, we all miss Anwar and pray for him to return to the USA. Ayman Al-Sawa saying that he argues all organizers that Anwar helped in the past to come in support of bringing Anwar back. Bushra, again, asking to bring him back. The Gambellini Barcenas, thank you. Oh, Tina, I'm sorry, I'm misspeaking. I see other people showing support for other comments. That's really beautiful to see. I love to see solidarity in the comments here. I actually hope that once Anwar joins the show again, that you can share this video so people beyond the support group for Anwar's campaign can also become familiarized with it, and hopefully that that advocacy group can grow. Let's see what else. Alia says, what amazing strength of character. I really struggle to understand how states are justifying returning people to Yemen currently. Is there any way we can know more about this? Eric, are you able to speak to that question?
Yes, I am posting right now a link to a short, like 10-minute PBS documentary that was done on Anwar's story. So momentarily I'll have that up. Just check the comments.
You know, one thing that I'm curious about personally is that when Anwar was deported, we saw huge support actually from even political leaders, including Elizabeth Warren on social media. There was a really diverse group of people who were supportive of Anwar and urging that the decision to deport him be reversed. And with the US elections coming up and a potential change in administration, I'm curious if there's any hope once that happens, that if that happens, if that will change the status of Anwar's case. If anyone who's in the comments knows more about kind of that area of his case, we'd love to hear from you. I'm not sure if any of his advocates or lawyers are following along with this live, but that's certainly an area that we would love to know more about. All I see is just a slew of people saying that they love Anwar. I think he's probably the most popular guy I know. He's such a wonderful human, and so that makes it even more heartbreaking that he's in this situation.
So yes, I'm talking to him now. He's saying he's going to try to get back on in about 5 minutes. So we'll see. Otherwise, I mean, I can just kind of go off on my thoughts on immigration globally.
I would love for you to take over the mic and share what you have in mind.
I can give you a breather. If you need some breathing room, I can do my best.
Over to you.
I'll be the first to say that I'm no kind of expert on what's happening in Yemen. I've been following it to the best of my ability as things have unfolded, going back to about 2015 when things really started to get ugly there. And I mean, as I already mentioned, this quickly became. I'm reluctant to use terms like proxy war because a lot of times that kind of takes the agency away from the people on the ground who have their own legitimate grievances. They're not just pawns in some international conflict. So it's important to recognize that there are just genuine grievances that exist on the ground between parties in Yemen. And not being an expert on that conflict, I'm reluctant to start pointing fingers either. Although I will say that the escalation of this conflict and the scale of the humanitarian crisis, to me, is very clear. That there was a concerted effort to escalate this by the Saudi-led coalition, which included the Emirates and other actors. So there was a huge toll in the form of destruction of civilian infrastructure. I mean, we're talking like hospitals, wedding parties that were blown up by airstrikes, and just happening on a regular enough basis to where it just seemed hard to suggest that they were all just accidental. If anything, if nothing else, it was just absolutely reckless negligence. And there was a a story that it came out. I can't remember where, major newspaper in the U.S. I think it was the New York Times. This is going back maybe a couple of years, where a school bus with like 40 kids who'd gone out for like a field trip just to get some relief, and have something resembling a normal like school life, was hit by one of these missiles, and like everybody was killed instantly. Just really heartbreaking snapshots like that are unfortunately not uncommon in that country. And there are all kinds of theories about, who's backing up who, but at the end of the day, like it's very clear to me that the U.S. and other Western countries have had a role to play in providing the political cover, the logistical support, the intelligence support, and material supports if they're not directly involved militarily in this conflict. So that's like to answer the question of what can we do about it, or why should we be concerned about a war that's happening a world away? Yeah, your tax dollars at work, Americans, British people, and I mean, I think even the Canadians have had a role in providing different forms of like material support to the Saudi government. So yeah, I mean, it implicates a lot of people. And I think even when at some point some of these countries started pulling back on selling like smart bombs, then the Spanish government stepped up. So, I mean, there's plenty of room to be cynical. But, one thing that I did notice is that when Americans really took an interest in this issue and started lobbying their congresspeople, it got taken up on the floor of Congress. And there was real momentum to try and hold the Saudis to account, and also, by extension, the American politicians who were covering for them or providing them with support or petitioning to keep things the way that they were. So, yeah, I mean, it's a case study, and I guess there's plenty of reasons to be depressed about not just the situation in Yemen, but how it implicates Western governments. But there's also glimmers of hope in this situation that remind us that our voices actually do matter if we pull them together and try and act. And that holds true not just in the case of like a multinational armed conflict, but also in the case of individuals, which is what we're trying to highlight here today. Like we can all come together and we can make a difference as far as holding governments to account, including our own governments, when it comes to these conflicts that claim thousands and tens of thousands of lives, but also to petition on behalf of an individual who's been treated unfairly, and to use their case to highlight how others are being treated as well. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Leila. I can kind of keep going indefinitely, but I should probably check in on Anwar as well.
I'll just make a short mention that I think too many of us are intimidated by the idea of building relationships with our elected officials, at least those of us in the United States, but they work for us. So, we vote them in, and it's so important to be voting in the people you want to represent you, because that is your responsibility as a citizen of the United States. And, people who are impacted by the laws of our country outside of the US would want us to be able to vote for people that also protect their lives, because our country dictates so much of what else is happening in the world. So please don't ever think that you don't have the words or the language to be able to petition on behalf of people like Anwar or for the larger situation in Yemen. You just have to pick up the phone or write an email and start that conversation with your elected official, because otherwise you can't assume that they're hearing from other people on these causes. Your advocacy makes a massive difference. That's why the things that do happen in our country happen, is because someone is knocking down the doors or writing letters or calling the representatives. And right now, amid COVID-19, elected officials, especially coming up into the election period, they're looking to hear from constituents. So, and they're taking Zoom calls, they're taking different ways of connecting virtually with the people that they represent. So don't be shy to do that. And if you ever have questions on that, although this podcast doesn't have a mechanism, we can point you to other mechanisms that make it easy for you to write to your legislators about things you care about. That's all I have for now.
Yeah. See, I'm like Leila, like we're both in this space, we're managing multiple things at the same time. So I think I caught most of what you said.
I was basically saying, write to your Congress members or Congress people, and don't be shy. It looks like Anwar's back on. I'm going to try to add him in.
All right, great.
Anwar, can you hear us?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Very clear.
Great. Perfect.
Okay, welcome to Anwar, everyone. Please, Eric, let's get us
Yeah,
started.
we have
All right.
to go to another place.
All right. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me right now, Anwar? Is this okay? Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like there's a bit of a delay, but we'll do what we can to work around it. So I'm just going to start off by asking you our first question. So first of all, what part of Yemen are you in, and how did you wind up there? How did you come to be there? Where are you, and why are you there?
Uh, I am in Ad- I am I am in Aden, and Israel city in the planet. And also it's a very sad situation here in the city of Aden.
Someone is asking if it is safe for you to say what city you're in. And I want to ask you also, do you feel safe right now?
No, I am not safe. Because the Civil War, and because I'm a photographer, because I'm a press, and because I stood for the government of Yemen, and because what I was doing especially in New York, for protesting for the government, and do all kind of stuff against the other groups, special, the Houthis, the Saudi.
So, can you tell us what are the conditions like for people where you are? What are you seeing?
the, the people here, let's start with the children who move from the war zone to trying to seek better place, safe place. They are everywhere, asking for money, asking for food, from like 6 years old to like whatever, and everybody here, a lot of homeless. And one of the things I just find out, those children, they're so smart, but they end up to another place where they can find like a better place. And if you see what they live in a shelter, they live in the bushes, they live in the street. And the other thing, what hurt me more, the parents, they ask those children to go outside and ask for money. This is another problem. Not a lot of people know about that. Some parents, they take advantage of the children and tell them go and get money. And one of the girls, she told me, her friend, she has to make at least $2 a day. If she can make $2 a day, it's mean like $5,000 or $6,000 in Yemen money. Like the $100 right now is 75. So she has to make $2,000. And old man's asking for money, young people, and it's really sad situation. Is those people, they doesn't deserve this life. Then when you get up early morning, you see people sleeping everywhere in the street, under the cars, inside the cars, on the top of the cars, under like next to the street, under the buildings, everywhere. People, they can afford to rent. They can afford to pay for like small room. So they work all day and then they live in the street. And then when they take a shower, they find a place where they can take a shower on the beach, by the sea, or whatever. And this is how they live. Is hurtful.
Thank you for taking time to answer that, Anwar. We appreciate it. And I just want to make sure that if I seem that I'm being kind of cold and efficient and going from questions, it's just to make sure that we take advantage of the time that you have while you have a good connection. So I'm going to pass the next question over to Leila.
Thank you again, Anwar. We're really glad that we're able to be connecting with you. I shared a picture of you on our screen so anyone who's unfamiliar with you can see the wonderful human that you are. I wanted to ask you, what dangers have you faced since returning to Yemen? Can you tell us maybe some stories or some information about that more specifically?
To Yemen, and I end up like I'm going to be in the prison for a long time. Let's start from what I see by my own, what I heard, what I see. If you post one picture against the Houthi and Sana'a, one photo on Facebook, you can go to jail for 1 year. If you have connection, they will let you out. If you didn't have no connection, you can spend 3 years, 4 years, just posting a picture against any group like Saudi, UAE, the Houthis. So the Houthis, they are in my home territory, so I can even see my family and because of them. So, and there's a lot of snitch people, they snitch too. They sell other people. And this one of the thing, like I'm afraid. And like sometimes I have like a bad dream. Those they gotta come catch me out the Saudi or the UAE, whatever. And because as a photographer, is telling the truth, people don't like the truth. If you tell the truth in Yemen, you're gonna end up hurting yourself or hurting your family. And if you be silent, you be like a devil. So you like you are in like in the middle of nowhere. When I was in New York, of course, I stuck for justice, for peace, for people. And now I'm like trying to finish my situation, and I'm waiting for the justice, or they can tell me, okay, they bring me back, or they denied my case, so I can go to another country like Europe, Turkey, uh, what other country. Yemen is a beautiful country, but me personally, I can't feel safe, so I need to leave this place as soon as possible. I'm just waiting for my situation, and I have to hide. I have to change my name. I have to try to look. I cannot go outside too much. Even when I go on the street, people they tell me like, if I go cash money, oh, you the photographer? Are you a guy? Are you the photographer? Checkpoints, especially my accent, like Yemenis and from like Palestinian or Jordanian. Oh, you're not from Yemen. What's your driver license? What's your ID? And like that. And there's a lot of racist soldier here in the south, and it is hurt. Like I'm Yemenis, and like I feel I'm not in Yemen. Yemen right now is three groups right now, they are fighting, and it is shame. Every morning I gotta
Yeah,
win, this situation is gonna end. I just want to be free, like when I was in New York, carry my camera and just go to any like wildlife, go any mountain, just hike and just be alone. This is what I want to do right now. It's just looking around, who's gonna call you, who's gonna snatch you, who's gonna take you from your room, who's gonna hurt you, kill you. And there's a lot of photographers, a lot of journalists who are behind bars, who get killed, who get assassination by soldiers, by government. And this is like what every day in my mind is like, is my turn right now, and trying to be safe. And me, I'm like a bird. I like to fly everywhere. I like to visit the. I just want to be free. So it is hard, but I have to be strong, and I'm not giving up. And I believe in God. I'm praying, and in the same time, I'm helping the people over here, trying to help whatever I can help. And inshallah, very soon, this.
It sounds like we may have cut out for a moment. Are you still there? Anwar, are you able to hear us? I think I hear his end. Are you able to hear us? So something that I'm going to address here, that if we had been able to bring his attorney on the show, we probably would have posted him. But I'm just going to go ahead and kind of address it myself. Do you think that's something I should do at this point, Layla?
yeah, let's go for it. I saw that Anwar just dropped from the call, but I'm sure he'll try to log back on since the electricity is so erratic.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure that the people who are watching this right now, especially those supporting Anwar, don't have this question, right? But it bears mentioning for people who might not understand his story, or who might just have kind of a knee-jerk reaction when they hear of people being deported from the U.S., which you hear in a lot of different contexts, which is like, what did they do wrong, or doesn't the U.S. have the right to do these things? There's another side to that, right? Which is that The U.S. also has an obligation, and it's a signatory to a number of binding international treaties and international instruments to protect people from being placed in situations like the one that Anwar is in right now. As he's made it abundantly clear, he is in an incredibly unstable environment for anyone who's in Yemen. And he's also, as someone who's done political activism and worked in journalism in the US, he's uniquely at risk, even within that context. So this idea that, the US has the right to deport people if it wants to follow the letter of the law, all of this stuff, the US also has certain binding obligations to anybody who's in situations that are much less threatening than the one that he's found himself in. So again, to the people who might be listening to this is probably not news to you, but if you find yourself confronted with this question, this is the answer that I would probably give. Yeah. So,
thank you for that, Eric.
We're also hearing, go ahead. I was going to just address some of the
comments.
I
was just going to say, I'm seeing them. Yeah, me too. Go ahead.
You want to, or should I go? I can go ahead. All right. So, yeah, I've seen a number of people pointing out to be careful about stating what his location is. We are being careful, just so that everybody knows. We're not going to ask him to pinpoint where he is seeking shelter or where he is connecting to us from right now, other than the city that he's located in, which he's told us. But we absolutely appreciate the concern for his safety. We share it too, and that's a basic security protocol that we follow with all of our interviews in this show. So, just so that you know, going forward from this moment until the end of our broadcast, we are going to absolutely take that into consideration. And as he's made very clear, it's necessary for the circumstances that he's in. Layla, did you have anything you wanted to add, or I can continue?
This is not an area where I have a whole lot of knowledge, so I really defer to you and the things that you think are important to share, and I'm here to listen.
All right. So, where to go? I mean, there's another story that's emerging, and that kind of, in a way, connects to the subject of our last couple of broadcasts, was focused on Beirut. And that is that the story in Beirut port, where there had been tons of high explosives that had been stored there for years, I think back to 2013. There's this question of, well, people knew about this for years. Why didn't anybody do anything? And that situation is actually unfolding right now off the coast of Yemen in the form of an oil tanker that has over 1 million barrels of crude oil stored in it that haven't been inspected for 5 years. It's a ecological disaster in the making. I'll get back to that at the end of the show or at our next break. But let's see if Anwar's been able to join us again. Are you back with us, Anwar? Can you hear us?
Hello, Eric.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? We can hear you. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me okay? Hello, Anwar. Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear your microphone, so we're getting something. Are you able to hear me on your end? All right. So I think I'm just going to continue with where we were. Anwar, are you able to hear me at this point? Yeah, we can hear your microphone on your end. Can you talk, Anwar? I can hear. Can you say something? Okay, I think we've lost him again. All right, so we're going to stand by because we do think this is an important connection to make. And we're hoping that we'll be able to continue with and conclude our interview. But in the meantime, I want to pick up where I left off in describing the situation that's unfolding off the coast of Yemen. So those that followed the story in Beirut, this massive explosion that ended up leaving hundreds of thousands of people homeless, thousands of people injured, and I think last I heard, a couple hundred people dead. That was a situation where at any point, somebody in the position of authority and responsibility could have done the right thing. And we are seeing a similar situation unfolding off the coast of Yemen right now. There's an oil tanker that has about, I think it's 1.1 million barrels of crude oil sitting in it uninspected. And oil doesn't just have a shelf life that lasts forever. I'm not an engineer or any sort of expert on the industry around that resource, but there are certain safety protocols that need to be followed in order to make sure that an ecological disaster doesn't happen. And it's been about 5 years since anybody's been on board to inspect its cargo. It's an oil tanker called the FSO Safer, and it's essentially a ticking time bomb. There's over 1 million barrels of crude oil on board again, and if something were to happen and the ship were to rupture and this were to cause a spill, to put this in context, it would be about 4 times the size of the 1989 Exxon Valdez disaster in Alaska, which was massive, like cataclysmic by just about any estimation. So imagine that taking place in the context of what's already happening with Yemen, and what this would mean for not just for Yemen, but the people of the region. So right now, the situation is that the UN team is not able to get in to inspect it. What they are saying is that this is an area that's controlled. This is obviously off the coast, but it's an area of the coast that's controlled by the Houthis, and they're not able to get access to be able to inspect it or to take the necessary measures to make sure that it doesn't create a catastrophic accident. So this is one of those things, the story that I
Hi,
suggest that
Layla.
you follow. Hello, Anwar, you're back. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh,
Great.
I'm so glad you're back.
Yes, clear.
All right, great. So I'm just going to continue where we left off,
All right,
and
let's
I have
talk.
another question for you. Go ahead.
Okay, I heard about the United Nations. I really want to talk about the United
Please.
Nations and the World Health Organization. I would love to talk about them.
Please go ahead.
They are not doing great job. They are not doing great job in Yemen. I see by my own eye. If you go to the camps, what I see, they put like a small tent and a small tank with water, and they put 3 bathroom. They put 1 bathroom for like 11 families or 5 families, and they put big logos like the UIA. They put like a small tank with water, and they put the big logos of the name. And then what they do, they start using those photos of those children, of those poor people, and they start doing marketing, and they start making more money. People here, the people who work for United Nations, they made up to $7,000 a month, $6,000 a month. And the people who work in Yemen, the Yemenis people, they make a month, they made $100 a month, $100 a month. And the people who work for the United Nations, they make up to $6,000 to $7,000 a month. And why? Because they're using all those Yemenis people money. Let's say I went to a government organization here in Yemen, and they told me, look, if you send, if the United Nations, like if we receive $100,000 to do a project, the organization would take 70% of the project and 30% to the people in the camps. It is really a lot of people didn't know what's going on inside in Yemen. Wildlife, like the crow you see now is turned to be brown, not even black. I see because I love, I study wildlife for 10 years. I know a lot about bird and nature. Sheep and goats and donkeys, they eat from the garbage here in the city of Aden. Wallahi, they eat from the garbage. There's no grass. Cats are so skinny. Dogs, it is so sad. I can't even see no birds anymore. Small bird, sometimes only in the outside. There's only crows, dogs, and cats. It is very heartbreaking city. And it's came to United Nations. They use Yemen. But when you go by your own eye, when you go to the camps, when you talk to the people, they hate organization. They hate them so much because they know those organizations. They rent the best cars in Yemen. They rent the best houses in Yemen. And you will Inshallah, I want to do like a documentary if I have the power to show the world what the United Nations, what the World Health Care, what they do to Yemen. They talk too much, but when you go in the street, wallah, and it's so sad. This, yeah.
Oh, Anwar just dropped from the call.
So I'll do my best to try and follow on what he was saying, knowing very little about the context in Yemen, but having come in contact with a fair number of refugee populations that are overseen, administered by, helped by the UNHCR and different UN bodies. My most recent experience, my most recent encounter with this type of situation was on Lesbos in the early part of this year. I spent 6 weeks in Greece in January and February, and the situation there hasn't really improved much since. In fact, in some ways, it's gotten worse. But what I did see consistently was a lot of frustration on the part of local people, on the part of the refugees who were stuck in a camp that was supposed to accommodate about 3,000 people and was crowded to, at the time I left, about 22,000. So just imagine the hundreds, if not thousands of people lining up to use bathrooms, waiting in line for food. And then when COVID hit, which was shortly after that, just the absolute impossibility of trying to maintain something like social distancing. When I was there in January, one of the first thoughts that came to my mind was, this is a situation that has been engineered to create a public health crisis. And that's before I even knew COVID existed. So the situation in Lesbos, where Moria camp is located, to my knowledge, the largest refugee camp inside the European Union, it's not Yemen. There's things in Yemen that make it far less secure and much more terrifying in a variety of different areas. One might well be the situation for COVID, which we haven't even touched on in our conversation yet. I can only imagine the consideration around social distancing when you don't even have access to water to drink or enough food to eat is a distant consideration when you're having to just struggle for basic survival. So that's another concern. And people whose immune systems are compromised by malnutrition, all of these other factors, the stress of just trying to exist and take care of a family in the context of armed conflict, all of these things wear down your ability to fight back against a disease and a virus. So yes, I mean, doing my best here to try and paint a picture of a place that I haven't really spent much time, but trying to connect the dots to places where I have and other places in the Middle East where I've seen this disparity that he's speaking about, that Anwar speaking about, where like the disparity in the salaries that people get in the international community come and work in some of these contexts. And just what I've seen anecdotally, where you see like these brand new, like fresh coat of paint, like brand new SUVs driving around, air-conditioned SUVs in contexts where people are just struggling to even meet their basic human needs. It's frankly hard not to get cynical saying that. And I'm speaking as a Westerner, you know, someone with the magic little blue book that lets me escape any of these situations anytime it gets too bad. And I've felt that frustration. So I can only imagine what it's like to be ripped from your life and forced back into a situation like this. And then to see what looks, from what he's describing, like, I don't know how to characterize it, is incompetence. Just in some ways, these organizations also have to fundraise themselves. And they're at the mercy of donor nations. And a lot of that financial support can be politicized. You know, it can be conditional. You can't criticize certain actors, etc. And when you look at like who the wealthy nations are and their role in the conflict in Yemen, I'll just leave it to you to start connecting some of those dots. So, I mean, my heart goes out to our guests today, but also to anybody who finds himself kind of in a situation where they're at the mercy of international organizations. And not to say that they're all bad and to point them all with a single brushstroke. There's people that are doing, and I've seen it myself, doing absolutely admirable work in impossible situations. And so it's not to say that we should just point the finger at international aid organizations and say that they're the cause of these problems. But it's worth a second look. It's not just as simple as throwing some cash at a problem, and then these organizations are run with perfect efficiency. And I don't know. I could go down. I feel like I could write volumes just on this one topic, and I want to make sure that we're staying focused on the topic at hand. So, what are some of the comments that are coming in here before I go too far off topic?
We see a lot of message of people hoping that Anwar stays safe. I think we're all very concerned about his safety, and I want to reiterate what Eric said earlier about us being concerned about that as the people interviewing him. And we hope that he's able to log back on before we have to end our show for the day so that we can at least get a last few words from him. I'd be curious to know what anyone in the comments knows about humanitarian relief for the people in Yemen, and maybe some things you might have learned from Anwar yourself in terms of the best ways to help. We'd welcome any kind of ideas or thoughts on that in the comments since we're on that topic.
And also, Layla, just because we are kind of getting close to our time here, what is the best place for people to go? We're going to link to all this, by the way, everybody. If you go to latitudeadjustmentpod.com/live, you will find the archived version of this in its YouTube format there, as well as links to all the things you need in order to figure out how to help Anwar and help people in Yemen. So look for that sometime later today or tomorrow. Also, we'll be posting those links in the comments. But while we're here, Layla, what do you think are the best places for people to go to get more information and to figure out how they can help?
That is a great question. I'm not as familiar with the humanitarian efforts in Yemen, but I know that there are many, and I think we'll have to take some time to just really carefully vet them with the advice of Anwar, who is on the ground, to make sure what we're providing is something that he is seeing as most effective. But so we do put those sort of resources on the website, like Eric said, again, following every single episode. And I want to remind you, because a lot of you are probably first-time listeners, that this is a show that we do live almost every Friday around noon Eastern time, but there's also a pre-recorded audio-only version of the podcast. So we have other episodes that were not done live, and they were done completely in the studio. And then these episodes get taken and then repurposed for that podcast. So I would really recommend that you subscribe to Latitude Adjustment if you want to hear more conversations like the nature of this one. Eric kind of weaved the topic of what we're talking about today and connected it with some of the other issues happening around the world that we have covered through the show. So I really just want to make that plug, because I think that people aren't seeing these conversations happening in the mainstream. And since there's so many of you watching, there's obviously great interest in these areas. So we want to build a community around those topics so that we can be doing more. But I unfortunately can't give you a strong recommendation at the moment, because I really would defer to Anwar.
All right, and I'm posting a few of them here as I'm finding them. So here's one. I will make sure that we show that. And there is, I double hashtag that. I think people will figure out what they need to do. But so yeah, go to the Facebook group that is hashtag Bring Anwar Back. That's one place where you can find information about his current situation and links to other resources. And obviously, we'll be linking to that on our website as well. So that's one place, that you can go and figure out what's actually going on with him in this particular moment, as much as he's able to update it, how you can assist him, and the backstory, and plenty of links to how it's been covered in the press. He has had support from some pretty high-profile politicians. I think I've seen tweets that have been put out in support of him from like Chuck Schumer, from who else?
Elizabeth Warren was one of them.
Yes, that was another one. And I think maybe even one more senator. I'm not sure who. So Anwar, are you back with us?
Hi, guys.
Hey, you're back.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best.
No need to apologize. You have no control over the situation. Thank you for doing everything you can to make it work.
This is to show you how Yemeni people are struggling with the internet.
Okay,
the next question. Let's try
sure.
fast.
I think because we have
go off.
Yeah. I think because we have a limited amount of time, we want to make sure that we just get to the most critical things to cover. So, first of all, Anwar, how can people help you, and how can people help the people of Yemen? What is your advice? How can people help you, and how can people help the people? All right. Not sure if there's a delay or if he's not able to hear. Anwar, are you able to hear me? All right. And
People can help me by
go
praying,
ahead.
by call the senator and the Congress people in New York. This is going to help after the lawyer and what they call it, the what I want to say, and helping people in Yemen. Helping people in Yemen.
Can we see? Can you show your face? If you have
Yes.
your camera on, we'd love to see your face if possible.
Can you hear me?
We can, and we see that you have your camera on. If you can show yourself, I'm sure that there's many people in the audience who would be happy to see your face, but maybe it's best to leave it off also. I'm not sure. So go ahead. You were saying people can contact their elected officials in the state of New
Okay,
York
helping
because
the
this
people
is where
in
you were
Yemen
deported from.
by stopping this nasty war. This war, it is killing everything. It is hurting every single Yemenis. Inside Yemen and outside Yemen. Even when I was in the US, it hurts so much because you are far from your homeland and you see your own people struggling. You see your country is falling apart. It hurts so much feeling. And now I see by my own eye, I see what's going on in the ground, and I see a lot of sad stories. Let's see here. I'm just the reason why I don't want the if I use the video, it may get a cut.
Yeah, I think we have a long delay. There you are. Hello. Good to see you.
We're so happy
It
to
just
see your face.
when you use the video, it cut the internet.
Yeah,
It takes too much data, yes.
but it's nice to see you.
Yes. A guy, his name is Bill Westermeyer, very nice guy. He's like an immigration activist. He helped me so much, and he tried to get me out to Canada. And he told me, well, you need to get a lot of people to call the senator and the Congress people. They will help. And right now is election time, so of course, they can use my situation. And let's go. The most important thing in Yemen. Yemen, we need to stop this war, and we need the United Nations and the world to stick for the Yemenis government because we have official government, and no countries right now are really, really helping the Yemenis government. We are the Yemenis government right now. Yes, thank you. Me too, guys. And we need the people to. We need the countries, those most powerful countries, to stick for the government of Yemen, so they can, so our government can get back in their own feet and do what they have to do. Sadly, a lot of countries are discrimination, and they are selfish. They are selfish. That's what I can say. They are selfish. And inshallah, this war will end soon.
We hope so too.
So, is there anything else that you would like to add that's important that you feel you share with the people who are listening and watching today? We want to make sure that we give you the opportunity to say as much as you can with the limitations of our internet connection today. So, is there anything else you would like to share with the people listening? I'm going to wait a moment because I actually think that it does work. I think it's just a delay.
I just want to thank. I, first, first I want to thank you, Eric and Leila. Thank you so much for doing this for me. Thank you so much. And to my fans, to my family, my friends, without you, I will be hurt so much. And I want to thank all my fans. They help me so much, and they call me every day, especially the American people. Like, I have now my baby and my brother Andy, and everyone who called me, and like Ibrahim, who's my campaign manager, and all my family, friends, everyone from Florida, California, New York, New Jersey, Delaware. Uh, I want to thank everyone, especially, and even I have a lot of friends in Europe, Africa, Asia. Alhamdulillah, I have friends all over the place. And they made me feel like strong, it made me feel good, and hopefully the situation will end very soon, so I can leave my own homeland. It's really sad to leave your own homeland to seek for a better place. And this is why millions of Yemenis right now are seeking a better place. They are in Egypt, Jordan, everywhere, looking for a better place. And it hurts. A lot of sadness to end soon, so everyone can.
Seems he cut out again.
Yeah. I think that, well, maybe I should paraphrase a bit, but I think for the people who are with us, you got the general idea. Like, Anwar is the sweetest guy ever. And it's obvious that he's got a lot of people that really love and care about him a lot. I'm seeing that in the comments here. It's clear from the campaign that was kicked off and when his deportation orders came in. It's clear that he's a deeply loved and respected guy in his community and around the world, and that he clearly acknowledges it. And so, yeah, the purpose of trying to put this event on today, I think, is probably abundantly clear, but it's to try and figure out ways that we can leverage supports, pressure our politicians, pressure our governments, and raise the visibility of Anwar's case, because he needs to be brought back, as the hashtag says. So in addition to that, also to highlight the realities for people in Yemen right now, who are stuck in the middle of what's already been over a half decade of brutal civil war. Leila, do we have him back with us, or is this just an image?
No, we don't have him back, but
Okay.
I do want to elevate the campaign. You know, we've obviously talked about it in the show a bit and then in the comments, but for anyone who's watching and unfamiliar, this is an amazing way that you could be supporting Anwar specifically. There's over 2,000 members of the hashtag Bring Anwar Back Facebook group. So if you have not yet joined it, I invite you to look it up and to see the resources that more than dozens of people have been sharing, because they've been following very closely. Anytime I've spoken with Anwar, he's referred me to his campaign or to one of his advocates. He really has, thankfully, an amazing group of support, but the more that it grows, the stronger it will become. I apologize if you hear any background noise on my end. Obviously, we're doing these interviews from home and you can't control all of the sounds, but I really do implore you to join the group and engage with it and share your own stories about your connection with Anwar with your representatives. Like he said, if you're in New York, reaching out to your Congress and senators about his situation and keep pressing them until you get answers about how we can help bring him back. I don't think that we can do anything more in his situation except for keeping him engaged with us, showing him our love, offering to be there for him, and taking this advocacy very seriously. I just want to keep emphasizing that.
All right. And I think, Leila, we're probably going to be, should I give some like kind of closing thoughts here? Is that the direction we're headed?
I think we do have to wrap up, and we're so, obviously the amount of people who've stayed on with us this whole time shows again, the strength of this campaign that you all have organized for him. But Eric, if you could lead us out, I think we probably have to conclude our talk for today. And hopefully when electricity is more stable in the area where Anwar is, we can bring him on for a part 2 or do a follow-up show.
All right. I'm just posting the link to the website as well for people to be able to find this episode and other topics that we've covered. I'm trying to type and talk at the same time, which is not something I'm good at. So latitudeadjustmentpod.com is where you can find this live broadcast posted shortly, either at the end of today or sometime tomorrow, along with all the materials that we're able to find and that you send us in comments to try and support Anwar and the people of Yemen. And also keep in mind that we've covered many stories around the world that deal with displacement, that deal with the realities of the cost of armed conflict on civilian populations, and I mean, everywhere from Mexico and Chile to Indonesia and across the Middle East. So unfortunately, there are many people who are in situations similar to Anwar's. And we invite you to check out some of the other content that we've been producing to try and create a platform for those stories to get heard, and also to share those stories as well as his. So latitudeadjustmentpod.com is a place where you can find a lot of other stories. And we're encouraged to see that people continue to download episodes going all the way back to the beginning, almost 2 years ago. I mean, the sad part of that is in some cases, these stories haven't changed much in 2 years. But the encouraging part is to see that people are still staying tuned in and wanting to share and to learn. And that is the encouraging part. So we create these broadcasts, these live broadcasts, and the regular audio format version of the show is a resource for you to educate yourselves and to share, to educate your communities, and ultimately and ideally to mobilize support. So we try to make sure that every one of these episodes comes with some sort of concrete action item attached to it. And you have a role to play in that as well. So anything that you want to share with us that you think can help to aid Anwar's efforts to return home, as well as assist in alleviating the suffering of the Yemeni people, please feel free to share that in comments. And to Anwar, I just want to say thank you for trusting me. I'm a stranger to you. I know that you've had some contact with Layla in the past, but I thank you for your trust in me and Layla, and being willing to come on the show, taking time at a very difficult moment in your life and for your country to come on the show and to tell your story and to try and also highlight the suffering of your community. Thank you for making time. And to the people who have been tuning in and sharing their thoughts and their comments and their concerns, thank you. Thank you for taking your time to not only listen to this broadcast, but to being willing to share it and to share your thoughts and to do what you can to help. And I guess the last issue I wanted to bring up again is this. Again, if you haven't heard about the situation with this oil tanker that's off the coast of Yemen, the FSO Safer, look at the comments and you will find more information. I mean, this is in the international press. This is not some obscure news item that we are exaggerating, just so that you know. This has been reported on widely, and the UN is monitoring the situation the best that they can from a distance. And we are looking at what could be an impending ecological disaster if this oil tanker were to rupture, that would be roughly 4 times the size of the Exxon Valdez oil spill of 1989. So please make sure that you are following up on that story to learn more about its status. And this is something that we could be acting on as well, contacting our Congress people, trying to figure out some way to apply pressure to make sure that a disaster is averted. I mean, and if we take nothing from what happened in recent weeks in Beirut, it's that when we see that these kinds of impending disasters are brought to our attention, we have a duty to act as international community and as human beings. Anything else to add, Layla, before we go?
I just want to read the last comment from Erica because I think it's a beautiful way to end this episode. And she says, "Thought of you this morning, Anwar, as I was watching geese fly south. Could imagine what a fantastic photograph you'd have taken of them. Be as well as you can be. Looking forward to your return." we all look forward to Anwar's return and to celebrating that one day. So keep the campaign going strong. And that does it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Anwar.
Thank you, Anwar.